Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. Folks, the long national nightmare is over. The losing streak. The losing streak is over. It was almost 10. Almost
Almost.
10 games.
I put it on Twitter. I was pretty confident when it went 4-2 that it
You
was going to
were
be 10.
you were very confident.
Well, not only were they down by 2 goals, but you also add in the fact that they looked absolutely exhausted, and we'll get into more of why they were
Yes.
absolutely exhausted in that game. But basically, the thing that I didn't factor in was they were playing an AHL level goalie. Turns
Ouch.
out that makes it. Hey,
Harsh.
I'm not even
Harsh.
taking credit for that criticism. That is what Spencer, who's in our Twitch chat right now, who is an Avalanche fan, patron of our show, though, really good follow or really good friend of the show, legitimately called him an AHL goalie, and he's an Avalanche fan. So
Okay.
there's that for you. You also have our good friend John Broadbent at Defend the Nest saying that he is their AHL goalie. So that is who Hunter Miska is, and the Ducks took full advantage of that, and that was something I hadn't factored into my prognostication when I said that it was going to be 10 in a row after going down 4-2.
I mean, I still think that you could make the argument that the Ducks' shooting talent at this point in time might not be even suited to beat AHL goalies. You
Hey.
could maybe say that.
Troy Terry made him look bad.
So we'll get into that.
Yes.
We will get into that. But this game, I think what we're going to do today, everybody who's listening, is we're going to start with the game that happened last night against Colorado. It's a win. I think we should talk about what went right there, maybe some of the drawbacks, and then we'll get into some of the games that happened this week. And then maybe we'll just go into questions. I don't know. A lot of the themes that we've been talking about this season and even last week and the last couple weeks, they didn't really go anywhere this week. There wasn't a whole lot of course correction or reversal going on.
Yeah. And I mean, Gabe Greenlee in our Twitch chat says I'm in desperate need of a Jake rant tonight. There may be one. Who knows? We'll see if it ends up happening. But I mean, right now, my feeling is just this team is what it is at this point in time. And I'm not sure if I can get too mad or too worked up. I mean, we'll see. It may be there. The more I think about it, as I start to think about how Dallas Eakins has used this team. But as you said, basically everything kind of we've been talking about the last couple weeks, it's not as if anything necessarily changed this past week. It was just more so
Right.
a reiteration of everything that happened. So it's not necessarily anything that's changed. I don't know if there's anything worthy of a rant, but who knows? We'll see. Maybe I have one in me.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure it'll come to you at some point.
Probably.
The people want it. The people are asking
yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
Now, I think that one thing that should be talked about, in regards to the week that was, is although it didn't happen this past week, it was announced on Thursday. Hampus Lindholm suffered a fractured left wrist it would have been just over a week ago, last Saturday, February 27th. And he's going to miss approximately 6 weeks. So he's expected to make a full recovery, but that is a pretty big blow for the Anaheim Blue Line here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you and I would both agree that he's undoubtedly the number one defenseman for this Ducks roster. And so anytime that you lose your number one defenseman, that's going to be a huge loss for the team. I mean, here's the thing, though. In the shortened season, everyone's dealing with injuries. Everyone's going to have this. It's obviously a huge loss for the Ducks. But, I mean, now, honestly, from my perspective, and I think everyone out there knows where I'm at with this team, that I'm not necessarily concerned with wins and losses. I am someone that's more concerned about seeing what the team has, their process, everything along those lines. I actually view this as a really good opportunity for Josh Mahura because, I mean, the issue was Josh Mahura came into the lineup, and right when Hampus Lindholm came back for that one game, Mahura came out. And so, to me, that kind of means that they view Josh Mahura as the replacement for Lindholm if he's injured. So this means Josh Mahura is going to have a long stretch of games where he's going to be in the NHL unless something goes completely wrong or he gets injured, something like that. And so basically, this is a big opportunity for Josh Mahura, and he's going to be able to really kind of show what he has and get some time with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when with Lindholm, he had the initial injury, which was lower body, that kept him out for a bit, that landed him on the IR. And then he had another injury, which kept him out. Then he came back in and then all of a sudden it turns out that, or he re-aggravated his original injury, and now he's got a fractured left wrist. So he's going to be out a while. Let me ask you this, though, just bigger picture, because that's what we like to do here on the show. What, where does Hampus Lindholm sit right now in this team's kind of, I guess, overall view for you?
I think that's a really good question, because I think that I think a lot of people view him as not necessarily expendable. I don't think that's the right way to put it, but I think as a very valuable piece that the Ducks should be looking to move. And I think I kind of fall into that category because the fact that, I mean, let me lay this out there for everyone. Hampus Lindholm is signed to a deal that he, or basically his deal is up, not this upcoming summer, but the summer after. Mm-hmm. And if you're Hampus Lindholm and you are going to be getting your big payday, this is a team, basically he's probably going to get a 6, 7, 8-year deal, depending on where he signs. If it's with Anaheim, I could see him wanting to get an 8-year deal. And so if you're doing that, you probably want it to be with a team that's going to be good, going to be kind of pushing for a playoff spot. And the Ducks aren't that right now. And so I think we're going to be running into a situation where the Ducks for a long time were able to retain talent because they were competitive for so long. And I can't really remember the last kind of talent that was like a younger player that they had for a couple years that they weren't able to re-sign as a UFA. I mean, David Perron comes to mind, but he was a guy that they had just traded for. Like, I can't remember. Really, that's the only one even that they traded for that they wanted to re-sign and they couldn't. And so I think that the Ducks are going to be running into a lot more of those issues. And I think that you're going to have that potential issue with Josh Manson, with Rickard Rakell, with Hampus Lindholm. These are all guys that all three of those guys are coming up in the summer of 2022. And if you're one of those guys, I mean, granted, you can sign with the Ducks, have loyalty. Obviously, that does play a part for some guys. And especially if the Ducks can offer them enough and they like the lifestyle. But, I mean, if you're one of those guys and you've now lost for the last 3 years, I mean, this is your big contract. This is your big payday. This is your time to exercise your rights as a unrestricted free agent. Are they going to stay with the Ducks? My gut tells me like a guy like Rakell, a guy like Lindholm may be looking for a better situation for them. And so I think that that's where I'm at with Hampus Lindholm and Rickard Rakell. I think the Ducks need to be looking to shop them, mainly because they have extreme value right now, not only because they're good players, but they have 2 straight playoff runs that they're going to be able to get with another team. And so it increases their value because they get those 2 playoff runs. And so I think the Ducks need to have a really hard conversation with those guys. I don't know if I would necessarily sign either of them to the deal that they're going to get. I don't know if I want Hampus Lindholm signed to a 7, 8-year deal. I think he's probably going to get 7 or 8 million. And here's the issue. This is not me saying that Lindholm's a bad player, but I mean, for instance, look at the issue that the Ducks have run into with Ryan Kessler, with Ryan Getzlaf, with Corey Perry, all these guys. You're able to eat those at those point in time because you're contending, and that's what you need to do to keep those players. And so you can eat the later years, deal with what the Ducks are dealing with now, because that was what was needed to keep you competitive and keep you in the running for a Stanley Cup at that point in time. Quite frankly, the Ducks aren't in the running for that right now, and I don't. That's not controversial. That's just where they are. And so you don't want to eat that salary. And so do you want Hampus Lindholm at age 33, 34 years old making $8 million?
No, you don't. Although I will say this, just so that we can get into the last night's game, just to round out this topic, Hampus Lindholm has been really good this season.
Yes, he has.
I mean, I think if you look at his numbers, he's still very good at suppressing shot quality against. I mean, if you look at Jay Fresh's updated player cards for this season, he's in the 87th percentile of expected goals against when he's out there. So he's very good still at basically making it harder on the other team to get quality looks. And just in terms of his sheer plus minus, he's also very high there for expected goals, not actual plus minus. Don't you dare for a second think I was going there. But yeah, so he's been really good. I think it is kind of, I mean, I think the biggest, not to, be so cold and calculating, but I think the biggest loser in this situation is the fact that if the Ducks were at all trying to trade him this season, that basically just went out the window, didn't it?
Yeah, well,
yes and no, I would say, but more towards no.
More towards no, but I don't think it really stops them from doing it. I think that the team trading for him still gets a run with him. Real quick, I throwing this out there right now before we even get into the recaps. I think that we pivot from the plan of doing last night's game And I just had remembered we should start with St. Louis because the Ducks actually
Okay.
played a good game in their second game against St. Louis. And
Okay.
going from the first game against the Blues, Dallas Eakins actually made some positive decisions with the
Yeah.
roster. And I think that that's important to talk about. So I think that that kind of informs some things with the Avalanche series. So I think that we actually should start with the Blues series. So throwing a curveball at
Okay.
you.
Okay. That I am all aboard that hype train. So going back to the very first game of the week, though, where the Ducks would lose to the St. Louis Blues 5-4. Look, there were some very questionable decisions in that game. Still with the Grant, Delorier, and Steele line, of course. But towards the end of the game, with the Ducks trying to come back, you saw some things form that they thought maybe they could build on moving forward. And I think the big takeaway from that first game against St. Louis was the formation of the Raquel Lundestrom Zegras line, which really dominated play especially in the third period as the Ducks were trying to mount a comeback.
Yeah, and this was the game where Isaac Lundestrom actually had the hat trick, and
Yep.
so he showed flashes of things that I think you and I both really didn't fully expect him in his game. I didn't expect kind of that ability to shoot and really kind of pick his shot and get it into the net, and he had some nice tips also as a part of it. So I think good on him. But yeah, in that third period, yeah, it was Lundestrom, Raquel, and Zegras that really showed kind of what they could do together as a line and really showed, I think, some promise. And that's something for Ducks fans to have some excitement over how good they looked at the end of the game. And I mean, they looked good enough where Dallas Eakins kept throwing them over the board. And it was so much where Trevor Zegras, sorry, it was not in this game. It was the next game where he played a significant amount, but he still played 11-03, which is kind of right in the middle of the pack for all of Ducks forwards. And if I am remembering correctly, let me just double check. I believe this was the game, right, that Ricard Raquel had the goal near the end of the game to bring it back to a 1-goal deficit that Trevor Zegras would actually pick up his first assists of.
No, that was the second Blues game.
That was the second Blues game. Sorry. All of it
Yeah.
meshes together at a certain point in time. We
Yeah.
cover a lot of games here. But so, I mean, this one, obviously for Isaac Lundestrom, though, sorry. He looks really good.
The hat trick is the big thing there for
Yes.
Lundestrom. And just to quickly touch on that, I mean, you saw Ricard Raquel pick up a couple of assists in that game. I thought, though, that, of course, the story will be Lundestrom. And not to take anything away from him, but like in particular, the first goal, I thought that it was a nice shot. He picked his corner and found the back of the net, but maybe a goal that Husso would like back, I would imagine. But overall, I mean, you can't really knock a guy or take anything away, like I was saying, from a hat trick. Now, the Ducks would lose that game though, and they gave up a goal to an NHL player who I wasn't aware existed, Dakota Joshua. So
Yep.
it was that kind of night, and the Ducks didn't necessarily carry play in that game, and so
Correct.
going into the second game, the Ducks made some, I thought, very reasonable and kind of necessary adjustments that they really should have been making this entire time. So first of all, Dallas Eakins would preserve and bring back the Raquel Lundestrom Zegras line, which did not have as great of a night in the second St. Louis game. We saw Troy Terry in the lineup with Comtois Getzlaff,
Correct.
Milano, Henrique Silverberg, and then the big curveball, the biggest of all curveballs,
Yeah.
is no Derek Grant and no Nick Delorier in the lineup. You would see a fourth line, of Danton Heinen, David Backus, and Sam Steele. So, look, the results were not, if you look at the underlying numbers, they were not necessarily blowing anybody out of the water. But I did think that there was a lot to like in this game, that this team's overall process looked a lot more sound. And it felt like, even though they dropped this game, it was still just a 1-goal game. It was still close. And the Ducks had the better of the Blues, I would say, from the first period, or after the first period onward. They were the better team. They just really couldn't find the back of the net. And let's just stick with this for now. What did you think of how the thought process was for that game and how it went?
So first off, I thought this was the first game where I could look at the lineup and say this was optimal. I mean, the only small tweak that I would have made would be to have had Max Jones in, but it seemed like it was a situation where Max Jones got caught with, I believe it was a high stick or a puck in the first game against the Blues that caused him to actually not be available for this game against the Blues. So it was a situation where I would prefer to see Jones in the lineup, but
well, I don't think he could play in
exactly,
this game. Like he had a tooth pulled in the
exactly.
first St. Louis game, so he was in a bit of pain.
Exactly. So I think in terms of the players available to Dallas Eakins, this was his best decision in terms of lineup construction, and I think for the most part it ended up paying off for him. I mean, the Ducks on the whole on the night, I mean, just looking at some numbers from the night, is they were at 54% Corsi for percentage, 58% expected goals for percentage, 60% high danger chance, 52% scoring chance for percentage. And the Blues aren't this juggernaut this season
They're
either.
Not.
But
They're not.
I think the process at least was correct, and the Ducks were playing correct hockey. And really, the main struggle in this period or in this game for the Ducks came with the penalty kill. And I think from a logical standpoint, the frustration that I had with that is that I think that Dallas Eakins probably, and we'll get into it because I think that this is exactly where he went, thought not having Derek Grant made the penalty kill suffer. And the Ducks allowed 3 penalty kill goals or shorthanded goals, and that was the difference in the game, 3-2. So I mean, the Ducks had 1 goal at 5-on-5. They were the only team to score a goal at 5-on-5, and they lost this game. And I mean, that's hockey for you. Sometimes special teams are going to make a difference. Sometimes you're not going to get the bounces. But I think the frustrating thing that I have, and this is going into the Avalanche series, is that I really wish the coaching staff would look at this game and say, all right, I get it. We lost. It was loss number, 8 in a row for the team. But this is one where we got the process right. And we should keep this process moving forward. And if we continue to play like this, we're going to see we're going to end up seeing the results go our way as a result of it. And there were a lot of positives to be taken away. I mean, the penalty kill, there were some issues. I think Yanni Hakanpää had a rough night on the penalty kill. I think overall Yanni Hakanpää has had a bit of a rough stretch in the last little bit. But some people may disagree with me there. But I think on the whole, this was a good game for the Ducks. And
I think the other thing we should mention is that this was Trevor Zegras' first point in the NHL. He got an assist on Rickard Rakell's goal at 1951 of the third period as the Ducks were trying to come back, dying seconds.
Correct.
You know, Zegras carries it in, kind of fumbles it a little bit, but drops it off to Rakell, who then wires it home. Also in this game, Troy Terry damn near scored and hit the inside of the post off of a vintage Ryan Getzlaf feed, and Max Comtois started celebrating, thinking that it had gone in, and then had time to come in and bury it. So I think that was another positive in this game, was that you saw a guy like Troy Terry get on the scoreboard and contribute offensively, and that line as a whole was very good in that game. I mean, they really dominated play, and then of course Zegras picking up his first point and Rakell getting on the board. Yeah,
and I mean, so really keying in on Troy Terry there. I mean, this was a big game for him, drawing back into the lineup after being out for he had been out of the lineup, I think, for 3 straight games, something along those lines. He had been out for a significant amount of time. And you and I both agree on this, that he looked really good when he had played previously, and him getting scratched was pretty much unwarranted, because
I don't think he had played since the Vegas series.
I think he played in the first game of the Arizona series.
Yeah, you're right.
He played in the first game of the Arizona series and looked good in that game, and then got scratched because of Milano coming back. And I think that he looked good, and he probably should have been in the lineup for a bunch more games. And I mean, what does he do? He comes back. He leads, or he's tied for the lead in the Ducks in terms of expected goals for when he's on the ice. Obviously, he's on a line mate of Ryan Getzlaf. Ryan Getzlaf was the only player with a higher number. Troy Terry was on the ice for 1 expected goals for, 0.21 against. I mean, this has been Troy Terry for the last 5 or 6 games that he's been in the lineup. And now, granted, it could be his line mates. It might not be him necessarily.
Well, the funny thing is that Troy Terry this season has basically been who he's always been, a good defensive forward at 5-on-5 and a guy who contributes on the power play. Like, I actually don't think he hasn't progressed, I think, to the speed that maybe the Ducks or fans would like, but he's been just as good as he's been in the past.
Yeah. And I think that he's showing some strides offensively in the last couple of games, but I mean, he's been pushing play towards the other team's net, and he's been a big part of that. And I think we've seen it of late with kind of his ability to find guys in the offensive zone with little passes. And so,
Well, also, I think part of the reason why his suppression numbers are so good has nothing even to do with how good he is without the puck. He just tends to have it a lot.
yeah,
And the other team's not getting chances when he's out there.
I mean, when he's out there, the puck's in the other team's zone because of him. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big reason. And then kind of going into Rickard Rakell, it's nice to see Rickard Rakell kind of start putting the puck in the back of the net.
He's
I mean,
hot.
you look at a guy like him who really has deserved to score some goals of late. He's a guy that has put up some really good individual numbers. He's a guy that leads the team in individual expected goals, shots, a whole lot of different categories. And the puck luck just hasn't gone his way. And it's really nice to be able to see him put the puck in. And so he scored late. Obviously, that was a really nice rush by Trevor Zegras. And I think that that's kind of what you want to see. You want to see Zegras be creative. It was late in the game. The Ducks were down by 2. He knew that he needed to get the puck in the zone. And so he just basically went into the zone, was going to try to take on some guys and see what would happen from it. And the puck ends up finding Rakell in a dangerous spot, and he scores. And awesome for Trevor Zegras to get his first assist, a primary assist also, mind you. And Rickard Rakell finds the back of the net. And so, really good overall in this game. And I think that I wish, because I don't think this is the case, the Ducks would have viewed this game as a positive. I think that Dallas Eakins and the coaching staff would have viewed this game as a negative, viewed the penalty kill as a negative, viewed a whole lot of different things from this game as a negative, where in this game, and I think that this is key to the...
Just to jump in on that point really quickly.
Yeah.
I think that part of the reason that they did not view it as a positive, or as much as maybe they should have, is that they were in the midst of this massive losing streak.
Yep.
And that they're just trying to get anything to result into a win. And until it does, it's not the thing that will get them out of it. If they were just a normal team that's not piling up losses, maybe they would have given it a little more time. There's also that possibility.
Yep, definitely. And
which doesn't make it correct, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. And so, I mean, their process was right in this game. And I wish that they would be able to identify that and kind of stick with that thought process compared to thinking you need to tinker. And I mean, sometimes, hockey's a weird sport. It's going to come back to bite you. You're going to win games you should lose. You're going to lose games you should win. And I think that this is all important for the conversation we're eventually going to have about last night's game, in the sense of, even though they lost this game, you and I are both giving them credit and saying this was a good game for the Ducks team. And the thing is, you and I both do this, and that's important. When they play good and play well, we give them credit, even if they've lost. Mm-hmm. And that's what's important here. And there are obviously things that factor in the loss. The penalty kill was not good enough in this game, but the overall process in this game was correct.
Well, I don't think you should be making huge decisions about your lineup based on the penalty kill. Because that just is not the majority of where the game is played, as it would turn out. And so that was the big frustration. And do you want to talk at all about the first Avalanche game?
I mean, we should at least mention the lineup decision going into it. So
why don't you take care of that one for us?
Yeah. So in the very first game against the Colorado Avalanche, it was announced first off that that Josh Manson was now available to the Ducks again. He was healthy. So everyone kind of, at least me included in that, thought he was going to draw in, and we'd probably see one of Ben Hutton or Jacob Larson come out of the lineup. And instead, Dallas Eakins decided to galaxy brain it. And I mean, here, let me at least lay out the best logic I can come up with for it. Is that I think his thought process was, Josh Manson's coming back from an injury. He doesn't want him to be playing in high altitude and needing to play 20 plus minutes. So he figured 7 defensemen allows him to really dole out the minutes better on the defense and really kind of limit Josh Manson's minutes to keep him effective playing in high altitude. Mm-hmm. Here's the issue with that logic. It really screws up your entirety of forward lines. And so I'm going to just really briefly lay out what the Ducks did, at least just from my perception of what the Ducks would do over the course of the game. Because what they ended up doing, the Ducks had Max Comtois, Ryan Getzlaf, Troy Terry together. Actually, let me find the official lineup really quickly from the Ducks Twitter account. But they would essentially run 7 defense and 11 forwards. And basically what they would do is they would do essentially what a what we do in beer league. I mean, that's the best way to put it, is that when you are short a guy and you don't have the correct number for, let's say, 3 even lines, and you have, instead of 9 players, you have 8, what you'll do is you'll basically have groups of 2, and then the third person on that line will basically be these 2 people that will rotate through. And that's kind of what the Ducks did on the 4th line. They had Sam Steele and Derek Grant together, and then they rotated through just different right wingers throughout that. And so whether it was double shifting or throwing off line alignment, they kind of did a couple of different things throughout the game by essentially shifting wingers on every line at various points in time, and then also just double shifting guys at various points in time. And the issue with doing this, and so here's the full lineup from the start of the game. It was Comtois, Getzlaf, Terry, Zegras, Lundestrom, Raquel, Jones, Henrique, Silverberg, then Grant and Steele on that 4th line. And the issue with doing that is you really throw everything out of whack. You make it where one forward is going to be overshifted or overplayed. And I think they mentioned after the first period that Troy Terry had played the most minutes on the entirety of the team, so more than any defenseman, which having a forward play more than a defenseman is not typically what you see. And I mean, I just think that this was a poor strategy, because not only are you playing a good team in Colorado, but you're playing in the mile high area, or mile high altitude. So the air feels thinner. And so you're just really messing up everything, throwing off your stride. I mean, you and I talked in the Arizona series. Dallas Eakins made mention of the choppiness of a game. Well, you're making the game choppy by doing this. By doing this, you are causing guys to not be on the same line every time, guys to get double shifted, different things like that. And so instead of going for that, just run 6D and 12 forwards and keep the lines the same. If you want to rotate a guy here or there to mess with the lines throughout a game, sure, go for it, but you're not completely screwing with the minutes. And
yeah. Well, what I didn't understand about it is that if you're concerned with Josh Manson's conditioning, just play him less and play the other D more and keep the forward lines together.
Or just don't play him in this series.
Well, sure, but I mean, he's got to get back in at some point.
No, I agree, but wait till they get back home to play the Kings. Have him debut against the Kings. The Kings are not good. And having him debut against them is a much better scenario than in Colorado and back-to-backs.
I agree with that. Like, that's fine, but I'm just saying there was a way to get him back in without going this unnecessary route. But let's talk about last night's game, shall we? I feel like we spent a lot of time here on games that did not go well.
The only thing to add about the game 2 nights ago, Friday night, that is of importance is that Trevor Zegras had a couple of turnovers, including one in the neutral zone, where instead of just getting the puck in deep, chipping it along the boards and putting it in deep, he tried to stick handle around a guy in the second period in the neutral zone, kind of late in a shift. And instead of putting it in deep, that ended up allowing the Avalanche to come back in the zone, eventually ended up in a penalty. I believe it was against Cam Fowler, and the Avalanche ended up scoring, not on the power play, but basically directly afterwards, so as a result of the power play.
Yeah, and he didn't play the last 7 minutes of the second and third.
Yep, exactly. And so Dallas Eakins benched him, and to me, this is just poor decision-making from a coaching staff. I have my article coming out tomorrow with my 5 takeaways, and this is obviously one of them. And I understand Dallas Eakins wanting to keep a kid accountable, keep his players accountable when they don't make a play that he thinks is the right play. But with a kid especially, there's a really fine line between accountability and negligence. And especially with a player that's developing. And essentially what he's saying is that you tried to make a skillful play. It didn't work out. And as a result, we suffered, so you sit. I'm punishing you for that. Instead of saying, there's a much better way of going about it. First off, Cam Fowler still took the penalty. That's not on Zegras that Fowler took the penalty.
That's the funny thing. This is something that I've gone back to a million times, is that the standard that Zegras has to meet seems so much higher than everyone else on this team. He cannot make a mistake. And yet Derek Grant can do whatever he wants out there, and it doesn't matter. He faces no consequence.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but here, it's because he made a fancy play instead of making the quote-unquote safe play.
Well, look, I think that it's fine to object to that. It's the consequence that's the issue.
Yep. And so there's a difference between accountability and benching a guy. Yep. And I mean, going back to the quote, there's that quote from Craig Button.
The thing is, I don't even know if it was really benching him as much as it was just more of what we've already seen from Dallas Eakins, where he is completely unwilling to play Zegras in any kind of high leverage, any kind of medium leverage situation.
Yeah. No,
So,
definitely. But so I've said this quote a bunch, but I want to put it one more time. This is from Craig Button on Trevor Zegras. And I think that Dallas Eakins did the exact opposite of this, honestly, in that game on Friday. He said if they want him to quote unquote be careful and quote unquote be aware of his defensive responsibilities, they will get a shrunken version of Trevor. He's smart, he's competitive, and he's damn good without the puck. I really believe it's in the best interest of the Ducks to set him free and play the game. So what a good coach should do there, just to...
well, okay, I do want to throw a little cold water on your hot take here.
Okay, fine.
That was a quote when he first got called up. What would Craig Button say now? I would be curious to know.
I think Craig Button
seen him in the NHL.
I think Craig Button would say that same exact thing. I think that what he would
No,
say is
that's probably true.
You don't want to stifle his creativity. Yes, he makes that play and you suffer a consequence from it. But
Well, I just don't think he's so bad that you need to take him out all the time.
Let me just add this to that play. If you're a coach of the team and you have a developing kid like that, what you should do is you should go up to him and say, "Hey, I'd prefer you to make that safe play, a safer play there. But if you
go back and do it again."
Well, no, if you can make that play, I want you to make that play, the dangle that he was trying to do. But you need to make damn sure that you've got it. And so you don't want to stifle his creativity. That's his game. You don't want him to second guess that. If he's second guessing that play, that's going to stifle his development. That's going to hurt him long term. That's the play that he should make because that's what he thinks he should make. And I think that that's important to not stop that. I think that's where this Button quote comes into play and where he would say, no, he should make that play. The issue there is he needs to learn how to make it correctly and get around the guy instead of turning it over.
Well, here's also what's killing, I think, Zegras's perception, I would say, among the coaching staff. Look at the expected goals against per 60. Actually, let's start with goals against per 60 at 5-on-5 when he's on the ice. The Ducks are allowing almost 3.5 goals per 60 minutes when Zegras is on the ice. Now, you might think that's because he's such a bad rookie and or defensively, he's just not there. But when he's on the ice, the Ducks have had an 86.67 save percentage from their goalies, whoever goalie has been out there, which mostly has been John Gibson. So the goaltending has just been absurdly bad when he's on the ice. And yet his expected goals against per 60 is over a full goal lower than the actual amount that have been scored, the rate that has been scored. So he's just not really getting the bounces defensively when he's out there because his defensive numbers aren't great. He's not one of the best suppressors on this team, but he's right next to Fowler and Shattenkirk. But when you look at the actual, when he's been out there, it's a completely different story. And I just feel like the coaching staff is probably fixating a little too much on the results as opposed to the process with him.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything in his numbers that indicate that he is an actual sieve defensively that just you have to shelter.
Yeah.
Or maybe this is proof that the sheltering is working, but I don't think that's the case.
Yep, completely agreed. So, kind of turning this into the next point, the Ducks ended up losing this game in overtime to the Colorado Avalanche. 3-2 was the final score. And so, kind of moving on to the final kind of piece.
Let's get to the fun stuff.
Yes.
Let's get to the fun stuff because a lot of good things happened for the Ducks in the game last night against the Colorado Avalanche. They snapped their losing streak, which is a big one.
Really quick, before we do that, I just want to quickly mention this. Josh Mahura played a damn good game in Friday night's game. And want to quickly mention that because he was actually the one who was on the ice when Val Nichushkin scored the OT winner. And he was the one who Nichushkin went around. Want to briefly say that Mahura was probably one of the best Ducks on the ice on Friday night. And even though he ended up being on the ice for that goal and being the guy that kind of might get the reputation of being the reason why that goal was scored, he had a fantastic game. And I think he looks absolutely great.
I do think it's somewhat telling that he hasn't come out, even despite Manson being healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that should be some kind of a vote of confidence, I would think. Maybe once the LA series starts, he'll be taken out. But I feel like the coaching staff seems to trust him somewhat. I mean, they're giving him pretty good minutes. So anyway, I mean, let's talk about last night's game. I feel like I've said that at least 7 times at this point. But the Ducks will win 5-4 in overtime. Highlights of the night. First off, Rickard Rakell, once again, gets on the board and, just gets a wrist shot to go through. Nothing really fancy there. It's right off of a face-off. Sam Steele gets it over to him. And look, you wrote about it in your article, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but maybe by the time people are listening, they've already read it. Rickard Rakell's been playing great all year, and he's finally getting rewarded for some of the lack of good fortune that he's had up to this point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've talked about it a bunch. He's just been shooting an insanely low amount, and no matter what he does, like that is going to be that's going to come up. And I mean, part of that is going to be due to confidence, different things like that. Like people say he's looking so much more confident right now, and sure, that plays a part in going. Well, that plays a part in guys going hot and cold. When you're confident, you're going to score above where you're expected to. When you're
who are these people you're referring to?
Actually, no,
because they seem to come up a lot.
That was Benny. Benny had mentioned that, and I think it's a valid point. Confidence. Benny, formerly of Anaheim, calling with us.
Okay.
The confidence point, but the concept that the broadcast crew mentioned of
it's the broadcast.
The concept of the Magic is back is just flat out incorrect.
Well, I think that it also paints Rakell in a bit of a negative light up until now, right? Yeah. Because it's as if something was magically wrong with him, right?
Yeah.
But let's stay on the positive trend here, because this, to me, this is the highlight of the season. Maybe this is the best Ducks goal I've seen, not just this year, maybe, I don't know, the last 2 years.
A while.
So a bit of a broken play. Josh Mahura preserves possession. Nice little spin move at the point. Surveys his options, gets it down low. Broken play in the corner. Troy Terry just fishes the puck out of his skates, spins around, gets it on his forehand, and then just dekes around the Colorado defenseman, throws on another move on Miska, and goes back to his backhand. And you see him really anchoring that right foot that allows him to get all of his weight on the right so he can shift over to the left and just tucks it home. Nice little celebration, jumps into the glass. And, with Troy Terry, I feel like everyone seems to have like a set in stone, like psychoanalysis of him. Everyone always talks about his confidence, and Dallas Eakins even talks about how he's sometimes looks like a bad dancer out on the ice. And everyone just has these like mystical reasons for why he's struggling. He's a good hockey player. And if you let him play, he's going to do things that good hockey players do, like score goals. And on that play, you saw the skills, you saw the footwork, you saw the hands, you saw the awareness, just even the thought to make that play. And for a guy who's been, even in a small market like Anaheim, in terms of the NHL, a guy who's been kind of scrutinized more so than I would say is fair of his performance, and especially relative to his teammates, I was actually really happy for him to just get that goal and to just kind of stick it to the haters.
Yeah,
stick it to the haters.
He's a good hockey player, and I said this last year, and I'll say it again this year. The Ducks are better when Troy Terry's on the ice than when he's off the ice, and it's really that simple. And he makes plays and makes creative plays finding guys. No, he's not going to be a 50, 60-point player. He's not going to be a first liner most likely, but he's going to be a guy that can put up 30 or 40 points probably, and give you positive play towards the other team's net and never really have to defend, because he's always in the other team's offensive zone, or other team's defensive zone in his own offensive zone. And so this is like, it's a whole situation of expectations, and it's kind of crazy how people's expectations can really screw over things, aka Nick Ritchie, and really mess with your perception of things. If you expect Troy Terry to be a first-line talent, you're going to be disappointed. But if you look at him in the context and the lens of, this is a guy that's just going to give you positive play, sure, you'd want him to score more, but he's not. He's making 1.7, let me get the actual number, so I'm not just kind of quoting it off the top of my head. I want to be accurate with this, but he's not making a whole lot. Like, if that's what you get out of him, that's a really positive thing at the end of the day. He's making, let me see really quickly right here, he's making $1.45 million for the next 3 years. Like, that's insanely good if you're getting that, basically. And so Troy Terry's a really good player, and I think it was really nice to see him put that goal in the net. I mean, he obviously came into the NHL with the reputation of a shootout scorer based on his World Junior performances, so it's nice to be able to see him.
One shootout.
Yeah. And so it's nice to see him do that. And so kind of circling back to the game on the whole, really nice to see Troy Terry get off the
Well,
get
he
a
scored
goal.
2 goals in this game, by the
Yeah, he
way.
did. And so really nice to see him get some goals going for him. Really nice to see, obviously, Rickard Rakell keep his scoring up.
Yeah. What I thought about this game is all the whipping boys got their due because Troy Terry scored 2 goals. His second goal, I mean, it's going to be hard to top the first one. Just kind of a wrist shot that gets through a crowd, beats Miska. And then Kevin Shattenkirk gets on the board to tie the game late with just under 3 minutes left. A point shot or like a half point shot that goes in through a crowd again. And Rickard Rakell, we talked about scoring earlier in the game. And then in overtime, Ryan Getzlaff power play goal off of a really nice feed from Rickard Rakell. And this is like one of the few plays that the Ducks on the power play have been able to kind of execute with some degree of regularity, just the shot pass that gets all the way through for the tip. So I was just happy for the guys who have seemed to carry the brunt of the criticism this season to see them get their due and to just have something to feel good about in what has been such a demoralizing last 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's nice to see them come off, get some goals, really score. Is it time to start kind of talking about the negative here, though? Is it time?
Well, let's hold off on that for just a little longer. Fight the urge just
Okay.
a little longer
Okay.
because I think that there are again just more things I want to point out about things that went well. I thought that Josh Mahura once again in this contest had a really good game. I mean, if you look at his shot metrics, 54.17 Corsi for percentage, and from a shot quality perspective, he was fine as well. So I think that the theme that's emerged for me with this Ducks team, and this it kind of waxes and wanes depending on the game, but it's that the Ducks youth movement is fully underway. Like, look at the numbers from this game. Troy Terry, 69.34%
Nice.
expected goals for percentage. Max Comtois, 69.14 expected goals for percentage. Josh Mahura, well above 55. So like, this is the future of the team that's contributing, that's getting on the board. We've talked about Max Comtois, ad nauseum this season. So that if you want to look for a positive in the last week, I would say it's that the kids are leading the way. The veterans are catching up now as well. Max Jones has been excellent. He's in a bit of a rough patch right now. He had to leave last night's game with the injury, but overall, that is something to really hang your hat on if you're a Ducks fan.
Yeah, definitely. I think there
Unless we're talking about Sam Steele, of course.
Yeah. But
you thought I was just going to be positive the whole way through? Come on now.
Yeah.
You guys know me better than that.
Yeah. So before we get into the negative, because I think that there's a lot of negatives to talk about with this game, I think it's time for a little bit of a word from our sponsor.
Yes, take it away, Jake.
So get prepared for St. Patrick's Day with a Manscaped if you're going to get a little lucky. Manscaped is the global leader for the below-the-waist grooming and the official sponsor of Crash the Pond. To ensure you have the best tools for your family jewels, visit manscaped.com and use code CTP for 20% off and free international shipping. So it's now just not free shipping, but also international shipping.
Yeah.
So you're in luck because the Manscaped Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Felix, included in this new package is the Weed Whacker for ear and nose hair trimmer, which you and I both have. What have been your thoughts on the Weed Whacker?
So when it comes to the Weed Whacker, first of all, I think that we have to point out that it is waterproof and that it uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. Now, it's a lot of words. It's a lot of numbers. We are a numbers-friendly show. But to really simplify it, for people like Jake who maybe have a nose hair problem.
Thanks.
We'll call it that.
Thanks.
We'll call it that. The Weed Whacker comes through because it's 360 degree. It gets everything. There are no spots that are missed. Now, me personally, I have tried it. Very comfortable. No issues. I don't feel violated after using it, putting it in my nose. It's not like a COVID test or anything like that. It gets the job done. And I do think that if you're someone who's got a little a little fluff in the schnoz, it's going to come through for you.
Yeah, and included in this package is also the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer, which is the best trimmer that you can find. Their third generation trimmer features cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology, so you'll be confident shaving your thunder down under. You and your partner will both enjoy this. And included also in this is the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner to maximize your ball hygiene routine. And also you get 2 gifts with this, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. So the performance package is the best value Manscaped has to offer and is hot off the shelves. So you can get 20% off and free shipping with the code CTP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code CTP. There's gold at the end of the rainbow with Manscaped.
Bravo. That was maybe your best one yet, Jake.
Thank you.
I don't know. I'd like to apologize for throwing you under the bus there, but with the nose hair comment. Do you have ear hair?
No.
People in the chat are asking about ear hair.
No, not a thing for me. Nose hair is a thing.
I feel like that's not something that happens until you get a little older.
Potentially.
Just hair starts sprouting out of your ears. I don't know.
This went down a weird path.
Okay. Well, so we've covered the games, but yes, I think that there are some troubling trends.
Yes,
to come out of this game, and to me, just off the top, want to get this out of the way. Trevor Zegras being scratched is not a good look for this team.
Yep, it's a really bad look, honestly. I mean, there's potentially. I mean, let's just throw this out there because it's obviously part of the conversation. He's played in 6 games. Once he plays in his 7th game, he burns his first year of his unrestricted free agent, of his ELC, not UFA, of first year of his ELC. So this counts as his first year. So I wonder if the Ducks are potentially really thinking that through. I've made the argument here a couple of different times that it's actually not a bad thing to burn the first year of a contract, because especially right now, it doesn't seem like his point totals are going to become elevated super high. So
it's overrated. It's really, like, I think people fixate on it a lot, and like they just don't even account for the situation or the other possible factors at play.
Yep, exactly. So I think it's really irrelevant to the conversation at the end of the day with Trevor Zegras, in my opinion, personally. And so it's something that obviously people are gonna want to hear us mention. So there it is for you. So I don't know how much that plays a part in it. He is still on the roster.
As of right now, the Ducks roster they've done some tweaking. I don't know if it's because of us, but the moves get announced the day after now, as opposed to when they actually happen.
Per Cap Friendly later on in the day announces puts out everything that's happened. So he's actually just so everyone knows before we get into this game, the moves that were made today were Chase DeLeo and Andy Walensky were put back on the goals. Jamie Drysdale, surprisingly enough, is still actually on the taxi squad. He's been on the taxi squad all weekend, did not play for the goals as a result of that. And so with that move, the Ducks were actually left with only 3 players on the taxi squad. So they moved Trevor Zegras, Josh Mahura, and Vinny Lettieri to the taxi squad today. So if you're the Ducks, I don't think you do that. I think you send Zegras down if you're not planning to play him. I just want to quickly throw this out there. Guys moving back and forth from the taxi squad is normal. It's not abnormal this season. It's a way to minimize your roster size on non-game days to limit your cap hit accrual on that day. So we could very well see, and I expect both Trevor Zegras and Josh Maher to be activated off the taxi squad onto the main roster tomorrow for the Ducks game. So having said all that, Trevor Zegras was scratched from this game. I think that he's probably going to get another game. I think they're going to burn the year, but the thought process here is kind of puzzling.
What gives you that confidence? Just curious.
What gives me that confidence is he played in 6 straight games. I think that you don't play him in 6 straight games if you're questioning whether he's going to burn his ELC.
You also, isn't the timing a little?
No. I think that it's worth bringing into the conversation. Obviously,
yeah, like the timing means to me you can't fully rule it out.
No, you can't. But I don't. I think that there's obviously a chance that he doesn't play and they don't burn the year, and that's it. And they want to save the year, and that matters to them.
Can you imagine, though, if he spent the rest of the season in the AHL?
Picture how pissed people will be.
Well, yes. So that's the thing. Not only so I would just think that it's not the best move for him. I think that he's shown already enough in the AHL that he needs to just take his lumps in the
Yep.
NHL and also find his successes in the NHL. I don't think it's enough now for him to just beat up the AHL and accumulate points there. I think he's got to do it the hard way in the NHL, but also from a fan engagement perspective, like what do the Ducks have going for them right now in that department? We may be able to see fans at Honda Center by the very end of the season with the way California is opening back up a little bit. But outside of that, there's just not a whole lot to really I mean, I'm sorry, like maybe this is a little harsh, but there's not a ton to tune in for night in and night out with this team. And if you're going to send the one guy down that everybody wants to watch play, not even just in Anaheim and Orange County, but across the hockey world, everyone wants to see Trevor Zegras play. Like you're kind of you're taking the fun out of it, the attraction out of it a little bit, I would say.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. So I agree with that completely. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think he probably draws in against the Kings. I doubt that they still go 7D 11 forwards. I think he draws back in. But kind of circling back to the game against the Avalanche where he was not in, I think in some ways he was missed on the power play. I think really the Ducks benefited from playing Hunter Miska. That's at the end of the day the big thing here. Like we said at the top, Spencer, who's in our Twitch chat and is a patron of the show, who's an Avalanche fan, clearly says he's an AHL goalie. That's his talent level. That's who he is. That he's not an NHL caliber goalie.
Yeah, and against LA, they're not going to get the goalie handicap because Cal Peterson has been extremely good this season.
Yeah, 100%. And so to me, like you look at this game, the Ducks were on the wrong end of the stick in terms of expected goals for percentage. They were at 42.5%. Same thing with Corsi for percentage. I mean, it's pretty easy to say they got outplayed by the Avalanche. And basically the reason why they were in this game is due to, I mean, you could argue in some ways it's puck luck because the puck luck came in the sense of they were playing a poor goalie. And as we talked about with the game against the Blues, they didn't necessarily get the puck luck in that game when they probably should have. They should have won that game on the whole. This game, you could maybe argue the opposite, where they didn't deserve to win, but they finally got that puck luck. And so it does even itself out over time, which I'm fine with. The issue I have with it is the process in the game that created the win was poor, and that could create long-term problems for this Ducks team. If Dallas Eakins has takeaways from this game as being, this is the reason why we won. We won this game because of the lineup decision, because of Derek Grant being in the lineup, because I scratched Trevor Zegras. When in reality, no, they played poor. They didn't deserve.
And that does need to be pointed out. And I want to, again, I'm apologizing a lot today. Maybe it's because I'm Canadian. Who knows? But the Ducks, I'm apologizing for repeating myself so much this season, but the Ducks need to stop playing Derek Grant so much. Like, he legitimately makes this team worse when he's out there at 5-on-5 and arguably on the penalty kill. Like, I don't even think he's been good on the penalty kill either this season. His numbers haven't been good there. In a game where so many Ducks players put up really strong numbers at 5-on-5, he was abysmal in that respect. The ratio of expected goals against to for was 3-1 with him on the ice. Like, he was just so poor. And the fact that he seemingly is untouchable when guys like Zegras are coming out, or we've seen Terry be scratched in the past, or Danton Heinen coming back out in this game, it really does boggle the mind a little bit. And
definitely.
Sorry, Danton Heinen did play in this game.
Yeah,
my apologies. I think I was thinking of someone else. But yeah,
I want to mention this real quick on this game. In addition to that, the decision by Dallas Eakins to ice 7 forwards and 7D and 11 forwards came back to bite him even more because an injury came, which left them with only 10 forwards. And it was obvious watching the game in the third period that the Ducks were gassed. They were on the back-to-back in Colorado for both games where the air is thinner. It's harder to play. And he's asking his guys. He's specific. And now, granted, he can't control an injury, but he put out an 11 forward lineup. He specifically iced less forwards and one extra defenseman and put his forwards at a disadvantage as a result of it. And it really came back to bite them in this game in the third period.
By the way,
they looked gassed.
Why is it that Hutton and Larson are just, again, same thing with Derek Grant? Why are they untouchable in this lineup?
Yeah. And
Dallas Eakins calls them our two lefties back there. they're just bad, righty or
Yeah.
lefty. Like they just haven't been good together. And at this point, I don't know who gets the blame out of those
Well,
two because they just haven't worked.
I want to mention this because people may say, well, the Ducks ended up scoring 2 goals in the third period, so they couldn't have been that gassed. Like I said, one of those goals came off a really bad play. Granted, Troy Terry put the puck on net, went in, but Hunter Miska played it awful. And the second goal in the third period came on the power play, which that's the great equalizer if you're gassed, is getting a power play and having the man advantage. But like the Ducks put themselves at a disadvantage in this game with their coaching strategy. And the thing that frustrates me is that this poor decision may get replicated in the future because this resulted in a win. And that's the concern for me out of this is out of all games for the Ducks to win, this should not have been the one. It should have been the one against the Blues. Now, granted, coulda, shoulda, woulda, that you can't control everything. Like things aren't going to go your way. Hockey's a high variance sport where you're going to win games you shouldn't and lose games that you should win. But I'm just worried about the long-term implications from this game.
So I have 3 questions for you.
Okay.
Before we get into maybe listener questions.
Yeah.
So where are you at after this week where we did see a hat trick on Isaac Lundestrom?
I'm still at the
that
same.
Sigh. That sigh, it says a lot to me.
I think I'm higher on him than I used to be. I think that's for sure. I think there is some recency bias in that, no doubt. He scores a hat trick. That's going to boost up his reputation in terms of potential offensive ability. There's something there that I didn't necessarily expect in terms of scoring ability. But I don't know if my opinions necessarily changed. I don't see him as a big play driver in the sense. I don't think he's that great in his own zone.
I really recommend that you put up his RAPM chart in our Twitch chat here because I think it kind of tells the story. Essentially, so people are about to see it here in the
bear
stream.
With me one sec, everyone. Our screens may be messed up because I need to update our feeds.
Okay. So, well, you don't have to do it.
No, I'll show it. It's just you won't have our people won't have our own video feed. So bear with me one second here. Let me get this updated for everyone.
So the point I was trying to make is that Lundestrom, although he is getting all these accolades about the fact that he's been scoring goals, the fact that he's been elevated in the lineup, and that, things are going well. If you look at his actual numbers, there's really not a whole lot to write home about. He's been good defensively. He suppresses shot volume against.
It's up on the screen right now, by the way.
Yeah. So he breaks even in terms of shot quality, and in terms of shot volume, he is good at suppressing that. But in all other categories, and this is including actual goal generation, he's below league average, or whatever term you want to use there in terms of shot generation and shot quality. And to me, this actually checks out more of just my own valuation of him, and also what I've seen is that there are elements of his game that I think have gotten a little better. I think he's a bit more solid in terms of preserving possession, and I think that's what helps those suppression numbers, is that he's good at entering the zone. He's good at defending along the wall. He has gotten a little stronger on his edges, but I don't see this big leap offensively. Like, yeah, he got a hat trick, and that's great, and that speaks to his ability. It also speaks to Ville Husso being in net, and I would caution people to, people that are just so ready to anoint him as, I'm seeing people on Twitter who I think have a reasonable understanding of numbers say that he's like the Ducks' second best prospect. I'm not there at all, and I think that the numbers would agree with me and you.
Here's where I'm at on Lundestrom. I think coming into the season, I probably would have thought he would be a 4th-line center. I think right now, maybe I'll think he could be a 3rd.
Well, I think, okay, here's what we can say. Here's what we do know about Isaac Lundestrom. He's probably better than Sam Steele.
Yes. I would agree with that statement. He's younger than Sam Steele by about 2 years, I think. 2 years.
He's already shown more at a younger age, and that to me that says a lot.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think that kind of answers your question to me. What you said, you had 3 questions, right?
Yes, I do have 3 questions. So, what did you think of Josh Manson since he did return to the lineup for the first time in a long time?
I think he had a couple quiet games. I haven't honestly. Let me take a quick look at some of the numbers out of curiosity.
His numbers were fine last night. I did think he was hunting for the open ice hits a lot.
Yes, and I think
it was very obvious.
Yeah. And he was at, let me see real quick, 51% expected goals for percentage. I mean, I think that overall he played a pretty quiet game in both games, which is honestly when Josh Manson's playing a quiet game, I think that's when he's at his best. When you don't notice him, when he goes out of his way to try to make the big hit, which he tried to do, like you said, a couple times last night, that's when he gets into trouble because he puts himself out of position in the process. And so I think on the whole, I think we saw a much better version of Josh Manson last night. I think the issue that we have is the 7 defenseman issue. I mean, you're swapping him in for someone, rotating guys out, and not getting any chemistry with your D pairs as a result.
Well, and I just think it unnecessarily screwed up the flow. I don't know how else to say it, even though they did win. Okay, so you seem to be kind of lukewarm-ish.
I think he looked okay. I mean, so I'm just curious at who his partners were out of curiosity, looking at time on ice. He played 6 minutes with Ben Hutton and then 2 minutes with Jacob Larson, and that was it. So, I mean, it seems as if kind of looking at those numbers, and that was from last night's game, it seems like they may just put him on the third pairing and keep Fowler, Hakanpää, which, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like that's a mistake.
So I think that the Yanni Hakanpää experiment is reaching this kind of insane level where people seem to be really convinced that he's been awesome. I do think that there are elements of his game that have been really good. I think that he has been really good at suppressing shots against. He's been really good.
He's been good
at clearing the front of the net.
He's been good at times also with neutral denying zone entries at times.
I think what's driving the perception of him though is mostly just the fact that the Ducks are getting some of the bounces when he's out there. And I don't think that that's entirely on him.
I also think Cam Fowler has been playing extremely good hockey the last 10 games or so. And I think because
Cam Fowler's just been good this season on the whole, but he's looked great.
Yeah, he's really found his stride. And I think part of it is people view Cam Fowler's success and they associate Yanni Hakanpää with that as compared to Cam Fowler just being a good defenseman and that being more so the why. I mean, more so why. And honestly, that makes me more so wanting to see Josh Manson with Cam Fowler because I think Cam Fowler had his best season of his career last season.
Yeah.
And I think that he's playing like that right now on that same level. And for the couple of games that we saw Josh Manson play with Fowler, their numbers were outstanding last year. Mm-hmm. And I really would like to see that again. And I feel like the Ducks are just, I mean, it's the same old story with Dallas Eakins at this point. It's misoptimizing the lineup and really going with his guys. I mean, I think people are buying too much into Yanni Hakanpää. He's fine, no doubt. Like
he's just fine. Like
he should be your sixth defenseman.
Well, my issue with Hakanpää is just that he really doesn't give you much offensively. He's really just out there to do one thing. He does it well. Like you could even argue very well, but it's a bit limited for how much he's playing. And like, for example, like you said with Manson, there's just maybe a little more upside there. But the Ducks, let's admit, don't have a wealth of options on the back end either.
Yep.
I think that should be accounted for. Okay, my third question, and then maybe we'll turn it over. So if people want to start getting questions in here, unless you had something else.
I have one other thing after this.
Okay, Adam Henrique is like a regular in the lineup now.
Yeah, it's almost as if they shouldn't have they shouldn't have waived him.
Like where are you at on this whole Henrique situation?
I mean, where I'm at with the whole Henrique situation is that they should have been looking to move him, no doubt. But the thought process of that they waived him because of his poor play and he needed to be woken up. I mean, it's the same thing that I said with Rickard Rakell, the quote unquote narrative street that the narrative street that you hear in various different things about Rickard Rakell is so similar to Adam Henrique. It's not as if that these guys are bad players. The puck just doesn't go in from time to time for guys, and that doesn't make them bad players. Like this is where having all of the numbers that we have is so important. Because at the end of the day, it's information. Goals happen so infrequently. I mean, they happen what? The Ducks average what, 2 to 3 goals a game?
Sure.
We're 20 games in, so we're at what, 40 to 50 goals, 40 to 60 goals in that range, as compared to shots where you're getting guys take 6 shots a game if they're taking a lot of shots, and it adds up over time. It's baffling to me that the narrative that happened on Adam Henrique. He was a good player. Obviously, I think that he should be looking to be moved.
Yeah, like he hasn't been amazing this season, but the narrative was certainly overblown on him.
Yeah. And so, all right. So here's the only other thing that I've got then
Okay.
is the Ducks really need to rethink their goalie usage. Shaken Wings is asking, can we get a Jake rant? This is probably the closest I'm going to get to that. But the Ducks are absolutely destroying John Gibson right now. And it's beyond frustrating to see right now. They are playing him. Let me really quickly, like you said, my takeaways article is going to come up tomorrow, and this will be obviously a part of it. But John Gibson has started in 20 of the 25 games for the Ducks this season, including there was that Blues game. Granted, he only played a couple minutes in the beginning in the first game, but he played both games of the back-to-back. He started both games technically, and so he started in 20 of 25 games. That's on pace to start 45 games this season. Or if we were to prorate this to a regular season, 82 games, it would be 65 games. That is insane. Like, I took a quick look because I was curious. The two players tied for the most games played last season at 58 games started. And that was Carey Price and Connor Hellebuck. And
how'd that go for Price?
Yeah, exactly. We have information. Like, Dallas Eakins is not a dumb guy. He should know this. You should know that you run a goalie into the ground, it's going to hurt you long term. John Gibson to start the year, I think he was 7.0, something in that range of GSAX.
The case for resting John Gibson was made how well he started the year.
Yes.
After having resting for the past few months.
And when he got no rest, he started to come back. He started the year and he
does seem to be really affected by usage.
Yeah,
and more than any other goalie I've seen in a while.
He was first in the league. Maybe it was like 7 or 8 games into the season in GSAX, and he's now come back down to earth and is actually negative. He's at negative 2.97,
almost 3.
Almost negative 3, which means basically if you were to replace him with an average goalie, now granted, usage, all of those things aren't factored into all of this, and so rest, everything like that, but just an average performance in every single game, they would save 3 more goals than John Gibson has over the course of this season. And there's obviously some qualifiers there. We had Kat Silverman on our podcast over summer, and she mentioned some issues that do occur with that stat. But obviously, it's just kind of an easy way to qualify various.
I do want to point out though.
Yeah,
I do want to point out, and this is not to take anything away from your point, is that he has looked shaky at times. Like, and I don't think it's purely because of him being tired. Like he makes some really awful save selection decisions.
But how much of that is just wear and tear and the fact that he
No. Like you don't have to become okay. Well, now you're basically saying that because he's tired, he's becoming dumb.
Fair enough.
Which I don't know. Like the poke, like especially the poke checking. You know, when guys are coming out of the corner. Or the pad stacking, you know, things like that that have always been in his game. Like these are not new things.
True, fair.
But they're kind of getting exposed this season a little bit. And I mean, look, I know. Oh God, am I going to do this? I'm so sorry. I know that the Ducks goalie coach Sudsy is a feel good story. He sounds like a fantastic guy.
Oh, you're going there. Wow.
But why is this still in John Gibson's game? Like he shouldn't be doing these things. They don't work. The poke checking out of the corner, guys just angle around that. The flying poke checks on the shootout, and he's been asked about this, and he says, to his credit, I'm pretty sure he's tried, but we saw the Canadians just fire their goalie coach, right? Like it's not this crazy thing that goalie coaches get held accountable. And look, Ryan Miller hasn't been that great either this season. So I'm just wondering here, what's going wrong, right? And I do think that moving forward, and this is maybe something we touched on in our last Patreon pod, is that the Ducks need to invest in things like skills development and also invest in their goaltending department, because it seems like it's a bit of an island over there. And I don't know how well it's being managed right now.
Yeah. So getting back to my point to start all of this, the Ducks should rest John Gibson more because
they should bare minimum, let him rest.
Yeah. To me, so I quickly did the math on this when I was writing my article. I think you and I both agree, ideally, a starting goalie should play around 50 games. I think that's really kind of where it's at in the modern day game. 50 games for the starter, 32 games for the backup. I think that's a pretty decent split. I think you're even closer to almost like a half split between the two of them where you're at. But I think somewhere in that range.
As low as possible. Low as possible.
Somewhere in that range of 50-30-ish, 40-40, or 41-44. In that range, I think is the money spot to put it. Whereas right now, So like I said, John Gibson is on pace to play in 45 games. The 50 game max would prorate to around 34 games this season. So the Ducks are doing themselves a disservice by playing John Gibson so much, and it's not as if they were winning games with him playing. Like, go ahead, give him some rest so you'll end up you're hurting yourself more now by playing him so much. And
they're also like not getting their money's worth long term because he's on the hook for a few more years and
a lot more years.
Yeah, he's on the hook for 5 more years, 6 more years, and this wear and tear isn't going to go away. This is a cumulative process, and there just seems to be a lack of evidence-based approach in the way that they're using him. Let's just put it that way.
Yep, 100%. I completely agreed. So I think that's kind of the only other point that I would kind of make in all of this is that their usage of John Gibson has been painful, I think, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I think that I think I took a look. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think they have like 4 or 5 more back-to-backs. So it's not as if they have a significant amount of back-to-backs left in this year. Like the Ducks need to.
Do you think we see Anthony Stolarz at all this season?
No.
Wow. Harsh.
No. I think that the reason why
they're barely playing their backup as it is. So what do you need a third goalie
Well,
for?
I also think that they're not even allowing him to get in the game as a backup. Like what they are doing with Anthony Stolarz is they're sending him down to the goals to play in games and calling up Lucas Dostal to the taxi squad to have 3 goalies. So they're essentially using Stolarz Stolarz has had more appearances for the goals than he's had for the Ducks this year.
Yeah, my question in all of this is how much of this is just they don't trust Ryan Miller right now, and they misjudged what he could do. I mean, to be fair, we were also saying he should come back, and because of that total lack of trust in Miller, they are just again doing the same thing they've done in the past with Gibson. Or is it also a matter of they don't trust Miller? And they don't trust Stolarz. They don't want to offend Ryan Miller and call up Anthony Stolarz and see what he can do in those starts. Because to me, I'm at that point where you're not getting anything out of Miller. You're barely getting anything out of Gibson. Try a new goalie. Try a new backup goalie and see how that goes. And maybe if Stolarz can have a couple good starts, then maybe all of a sudden you can give Gibson some more time off and you can let Miller work out whatever is ailing him right now. And oh, by the way, is starting Anthony Stolarz such a bad thing in a season where let's just say you're not against having a higher draft position either?
Yeah, definitely.
So
like yeah. So I think they really need to be kind of taking a hard look at how they are using John Gibson for both their own benefit now and the benefit in the future. Like it's just better for them overall. So ready to get into some questions?
Yes.
So for those of you watching the YouTube version of the show, yes, we're on YouTube. Find us at youtube.com/crashthepond. Subscribe there. Really helps out. YouTube's been growing a lot, but I know if you're watching this on YouTube, we don't have everyone that's watching this show being subscribed to the channel. So if you want to subscribe to the channel there, it helps a lot. And are on all your favorite podcast services also. We do a live stream of the show each and every time at twitch.tv/crashthepond. And so if you want to join us here every single Sunday at 8 p.m. is when we go live. You can help support the show. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. You have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days, but it helps us keep this show going. So we're going to get into some questions right now. So Nate, who's a good patron of the show, brings up, what are our thoughts on the John Gibson rumors? So there were some rumors that came out of Buffalo this week, I believe.
So the rumor was that the Buffalo Sabres asked on John Gibson.
Yep.
I mean, that's
the rumor.
That's pretty much the long and the short of it. I'm not surprised that the Buffalo Sabres are trying stuff. It's probably what they should be doing in addition to firing their coach. Now, I guess to make this question and the response a little more interesting is, how much should the Ducks be engaging in these conversations? Is it just a hard no every time to you?
I think you listen to what they're willing to do. I think that I think that with anything right now, you need to be open. I think there are two people in this entire Duck system who are untouchable, and though that is Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale. And I think outside of that, and if someone calls about someone, you have to listen.
So just to flesh out the details a bit more, so the Sabres have an interest in John Gibson. They inquired about him in the offseason and then again about a month into the season. And so both times, and this is from expectedbuffalo.com, which is a very good Sabres website, which I recommend you check out. Both times that the Ducks told them that they had no interest in moving him. Now, that was last summer when the Ducks were in the offseason, when the Ducks were fancying themselves a team that could push for the playoffs, and in the beginning of the season where things hadn't fully come off the rails yet. So I would still venture to say that the Ducks probably don't have an interest in moving him, but maybe their ears are a little more open this time around.
Yeah, and I think if you're the Ducks, the conversation starts with Jack Eichel.
Oh, wow.
Disagree?
Oh my.
Disagree?
Well, okay. Let me ask you this. I know Jack Eichel's not old by any means. Like he's firmly in his prime. He's 24, but how much does he fit right now into the Ducks kind of where they're at? Because to me, the Ducks are so far behind the 8 ball. I just don't know. Where do you stand on it?
You're getting 5 years of him.
At $10 million a year.
5 years of him in his. Is that what's left on his deal? I'm talking about his prime. You're getting 5 years of him in his prime. Yeah. And I mean, he aligns with a lot of the guys on the Ducks roster. The more so the kind of the guys along the exterior, but the Troy Terrys, the Sam Steeles, the Max Joneses. He's in the same age range as those guys. First off, think about that. He's similar age to those guys, and he's putting up ridiculous.
And it feels like he's been in the league forever.
Yeah.
Well, look, I agree with you. Like, I think that what else do you really want from the Buffalo Sabres? I mean, do you want Dylan Cousins? Right? I mean, maybe that's the other place that you look at is one of their best prospect, right? I mean, I don't know their prospect pool by heart. Maybe Jack Quinn.
Yep, don't want Jack Quinn.
I'm not super high on Jack Quinn. So maybe you ask for Dylan Cousins just because of the fit in terms of the age and the fact that he's still on his ELC. But Jack Eichel is the established value, and this is now kind of a bit outside of the nitty gritty, but I do love the kind of idea that the Ducks could have a good chunk of Team USA up front. I mean, if Troy Terry ever makes it, and then you've got Eichel and Zegras up there, I think that'd be pretty fun too.
Yep. All right. So question from Shadow Ops Gaming 13 says, off topic, but if you're the GM, who do you take in this year's draft? So I know you haven't really started your draft prep too much yet.
No.
I've started mine.
Oh,
I've started mine.
Scott Wheeler's
come out with his article. He had Owen Power, I believe. Let me just run through really quickly the list, because might as well. Let's put this out there. Scott Wheeler, I think, is yours and my favorite draft follow. He writes for The Athletic, and so he typically does a ranking, though, of all the different players, and he does a really good job of throwing them into tiers. And I think this year, more so than other years, the tiers are important, understanding kind of where guys are, because the thing about this year's draft, more so than any years, is there's not exactly a player that's separating themselves at the top of the top. Some guys could have a guy at first overall on their list, and some guys could have that same player fourth or fifth. And so you may be able to get the guy that you had at fourth overall at fourth, or first overall at fourth. And honestly, to me, I know some people will say, great, this is the worst year to be awful. I actually kind of look at it the opposite way, and maybe that's just optimist in me. But this is a great year to be bad, because basically it takes all of the luck of the lottery out of it. You don't have to, if you're bad, you're not relying on the lottery to get you a good pick. It allows you to be in, if you get second, third, fourth, you could get the player that you were going to have at first anyways. And so it really takes a lot of the luck situation out of it. And I think that that's actually an interesting way to think about it. So really quickly running through the top tier per Scott Wheeler. His top tier includes, as I get to it, Owen Power, Kent Johnson, Brant Clark, Luke Hughes, and Matty Beniers. Power, Clark, Hughes are all defensemen. Kent Johnson and Matty Beniers are both forwards. And then also a player that I personally actually really like, who isn't in his top tier, but elite prospects actually as is their number one prospect, is William Eklund. And he's putting up some really good numbers over in Europe. Scott Wheeler did a really good job of chronicling kind of his season, though, and kind of his concerns with it. So William Eklund's a guy that I actually have my eyes on personally. So there's some draft talk for everyone.
Yeah.
Ginger Wolf asked us, is there a beat reporter or someone who consistently throw tweets/post info like lines at practice, game day, daily news, etc.? Eric Stevens. And so for that, Eric Stevens and Elliot Tiefert are going to really be your go-to for that type of info. But this year, there are not anyone at practices. So there's really not anyone to follow for that info at this point in time.
Well, I think the latter part of that question, why all the secrets? Look, the Ducks they run a tight ship. You don't hear a lot of, anonymous sources with reports out of Anaheim, right? This is an organization that doesn't let a lot slip. They make a point of controlling the message, which, hey, like if you're a team, if you're a company, if you're anything, you probably do want that. And so that's also just why in general you don't hear a whole lot. Now, I do think though that fans kind of would like to know the lines, right? Like they maybe a little more, just like in terms of basic information. I don't think that that's crazy. I don't think that they're giving up anything there, but I think it starts from the top. I think Bob Murray is a very close to the vest kind of guy, and that just trickles through everything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just to be clear, I don't think I asked the second part of the question, but just so everyone out there listening knows, the second part was Eric Stevens noted today that the Samuels are real quiet publicly, and there's not a real line of communication between management and fans. So why all the secrets? So, M. Young asked us, what is your guys' optimal lineup when Milano and Jones are healthy? So assuming everyone's healthy, what is your optimal lineup?
Oh boy, this is a fun question. So let me
now, because we obviously put together
Yeah.
our rosters or lineups before the season, but
yeah, we did numerous times,
a bunch of times. But now that we have some games to go off of, I think it's a little bit more interesting. So
yeah, well, so I think the question for me right now is, what do you do with that Lundestrom, Raquel, Zegras trio there? Because I think with Lundestrom, I just don't really know if he really works there as kind of a minute eating, significant minutes type of center. I think that if he was your third line center. So I will say this, the line that I 100% keep together right now, I think that there are two of them. So Comtois, Getzlaf, Terry, I just think that they're working really well, and it kind of makes sense. Getzlaf is still, I think Getzlaf is having a very underrated season. Troy Terry is underrated and good. And Max Comtois has some flaws in his game, but he is a good scorer. He's shown that, and his weaknesses are mitigated with Getzlaf and Terry. Now, I think that I really like the line of Jones, Henrique, and Silverberg, just because Max Jones has been so solid at 5-on-5 this season, and Henrique and Silverberg are just kind of more of the same. Although Henrique hasn't been great defensively this year, but he does give you that scorer's touch down the middle. Now, I guess my big kind of debate internally right now is just, what do you do with Zegras and Raquel, and who do you put between them? Because I just don't know if Lundestrom is the answer, but I also don't know how well Zegras really looked how good he looked next to Henrique and Silverberg. I think that the way that those two play is a bit more north-south, a bit more crash the net. And we've seen Zegras with the guy like Raquel. I think that those two guys complement each other a lot better because of that east-west style.
You want me to throw it out there? What I would do? So
I agree. I do want to know.
I agree with your top line. I think keeping Comtois, Getzlaf, and Terry together, it's been working.
And by the way, there isn't a true top line in here.
No.
This is just a mashup of lines.
Yeah. It's just the order that comes to your head. I would put Henrique between Zegras and Raquel.
Okay.
I would do that because...
Don't know if I love that, but sure.
I think Henrique gives you a different element. The guy that goes down low kind of tries to get the puck for those two. Maybe can create a little bit of space. I don't love it, but I think it's a better option than Lundestrom. And I think he gives them a little bit more of a playmaking ability at various points in time in the center of the ice.
Henrique is the anti Lundestrom,
Yep.
because the things he does well are the things that Lundestrom does not, and the things that he doesn't do that well are the things Lundestrom does well. So that is a little bit of the kind of give and take there, which is why if Jakob Silver could play center, that would really solve this thing
I
quickly.
mean, maybe it's a situation where we just end up saying screw it, put Trevor Zegras at center and put Raquel and Silverberg on his wings.
Well, so that is actually where I think that this should ultimately go because of the fact that the Ducks season is, look, I don't want to say, I mean, is it over? Like, is the playoff dream over?
I've said we talk so much now with all the whether it's a Patreon episode or watch along, everything that we do now. I forget where I say things at this point in time,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I'm pretty close to saying it's over. For the playoffs. I mean, the Ducks currently are sitting at 400 points percentage, and so they
Mm-hmm.
have 20 points in 25 games. The Minnesota Wild are currently the first team out, or the final team in at 27 points in 22 games. So not
Mm-hmm.
only are the Ducks 7 points back, but they're 7 points back, and the Wild have 3 games in hand.
So here, yeah,
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
and let me just add this: the issue for the Ducks, and I've said this a bunch. If you get behind this season, it's going to be really hard to make up ground because
Mm-hmm.
if you're one team behind, let's say you're in
Mm-hmm.
fifth place, you should have games left against teams in the top four, specifically the team in fourth. So that gives you a direct opportunity to start jumping them because you can pick up points. It's 4-point games. The
Mm-hmm.
issue for the Ducks coming up though is that every single game, I mean, they're in last in the division in terms of points percentage. So
Mm-hmm.
every single game that other teams play, someone is picking up points ahead of them. Whether it's the team
Yeah.
directly ahead of the Ducks or the team in the playoff spot. Basically, every single game, someone's picking up points.
So I have the answer to the riddle, by the way,
Okay?
and I agree with everything you're saying that the playoff chances are slipping away. Are you ready for the answer to the riddle?
Sure.
uh, I think that it's one of Heinen or Jones on the left side. I actually am willing to take Jones off of Henrik Silverberg and put Zegras down the middle with Raquel on the right side. So let's just, for the sake of how we want to do this, I'm going to go Jones, Zegras, Raquel as a
Okay.
line. I think that Jones is establishing himself as a play driving 5-on-5 winger, and that is precisely what I think Zegras needs
Yeah.
next to him. Because look, his defensive game is not quite there yet. And I think the way that Jones drives to the net, the way that he's constantly, diving into seams, that's going to work well next to a guy like Zegras. And then, of course, you've got Raquel, who can kind of do a little bit of everything there. And then on the third line, Heinen, Henrik, Silverberg seems absolutely fine to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the fourth line, let's just start here. No Grant and no Delorier.
Mm-hmm.
Just right off the hop. Isaac Lundestrom, maybe you put him at center and you move Sam Steele to the wing. I don't think that that's such a bad thing. And then you have Sonny Milano. And Milano, Jones, Heinen, they're all kind of slightly interchangeable to me. I would actually be really curious. And of course, it's not possible right now because of IR and Milano being out. But I would be curious to see Milano next to Zegras because I think that he does have some of that playmaking ability, that hockey sense to keep up with the guy like Zegras, and he's got the legs, he's got the tenacity to go and win those battles, and let Zegras get free. So that would be my ideal version. This is mostly based on analytics, and also it's based off just what I've seen this season and what tends to work. I just think that the big drag on the Zegras line that we've seen is the fact that Lundestrom isn't really a play driver, and he's been billed as such because he scored a hat trick, but he's not quite there yet. And I think if you have him on a fourth line with Steele and Milano, they could actually do really well in that role because that's kind of where they're at in their development. Like it's funny how Dallas Eakins jostles guys around, and it usually goes against where they're at in their development. So Zegras is getting taken out, getting benched. We all agree he should be playing more, and then Lundestrom, Steele are getting elevated, but that's probably not where they're at, right? They're actually struggling in those elevated minutes. So if you can just kind of flip all those things, move Zegras to center because ultimately that is where you're going to get the most value from him. At least find out if he can be an NHL center. Then you're making the fullest use of this season possible, and that's
Yep.
what this should all be about right now.
Yep. And I also would, I think the other option is instead of Steele, have David Backes there.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, as much as I like David Backus and I think he's a good player, I think right now it's probably better to have Steele on a fourth line wing spot just to see what he can do, let him develop.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um,
Do you want to talk about the blue line just
yes,
really quickly?
yes, because this will be much quicker. Give me your six D men.
Well, so are we including Lindholm?
Yes,
Uh,
the question was very specific with everyone healthy.
okay, that's right. Sorry. Um, I would go with Fowler, Manson, Lindholm, Shattenkirk, and then Mahura with
Just do it. Just do it. Just do it.
who am I putting in? Oh, Jamie Drysdale.
Yes.
Jamie Drysdale. There you go.
Yes.
There you go. I
Yeah.
mean, at this point, what does it matter to have like why is it so
Well,
necessary to have, a journeyman in Yanni Hakanpää or arguably also a journeyman in Ben Hutton and Jacob Larson, who at this point in time is not looking like an NHL defenseman
well,
at all.
and I want to bring this up because this is what's constantly being parroted by management, and I think somewhat by some of the writers around the Ducks, just because that I think there's a narrative around.
Well, this is the message that's being pushed by the
Well, it's
the
the
team.
message being pushed by the team. It's also the message I think that's out there from a lot of teams that they want to allow defensemen to develop. I mean, this is a legitimate narrative that it takes defense, and I think it's fair for some of them. It takes defensemen longer to develop than forwards, and so that's why a lot of people are more cautious with defensemen. And I think the Ducks specifically feel like they got burned a little bit on Cam Fowler by bringing him up too early and stunting his development. The issue is I watched Cam Fowler during his 18-year-old season. He was not as good in his 18-year-old season as Jamie Drysdale is now.
Well, that's the thing. There's an equivocation going on between the two, which just seems to be ignoring what Jamie Drysdale is actually doing right now.
Like, Drysdale is putting up insane numbers in the AHL. He's playing great. And the weird thing right now is they have him on the taxi squad where he's not playing in the AHL.
You are just beating that drum.
Because it doesn't make sense though. Like here's the thing, and granted, like I don't expect them to fully put out anything, but if you're like this is a high profile prospect, if you're gonna have him on the taxi squad, and here's the best reasoning I can come up with. He came from the World Juniors. He's played in a bunch of hockey so far this year and a bunch of games in quick succession, and it's a rest thing. But it's like you could easily just say that. Like people have asked about Jamie Drysdale. I believe Elliot Tieford even asked about it and was told he's not playing. And it's like you could easily just put it out there saying we want him to practice with the team. We're using this as an opportunity to get him on the ice. But there's none of that. And instead, he missed back-to-back games in the AHL as a potential time for his development.
And the weird thing also is that there's this idea that, well, the Ducks are not in a big market. There's not a lot of scrutiny, so they can get away with this stuff. But if you look at, I mean, maybe this isn't a great metric, but when you look at their replies on Twitter or on Instagram, fans are asking these questions constantly. Like, why is this happening? What is going on? So even if maybe there's not as much scrutiny as in like a Toronto, people still want to know. There's still diehard fans of this team that would just like some kind of even cursory explanation of what's going on.
I mean, you and I have both watched the goals. Do you think Drysdale's ready for the NHL right now?
I think he's earned a shot.
Yeah. He's not. There you go. I doubt that he's worse than Larson or Hutton.
That's almost impossible. Almost impossible. Like it would actually be more impressive if he was worse than them than if he was better than them. Yeah. Because they have been awful.
Yeah. Ben Hutton has turned out to, shocker actually, a guy that was available at training camp that was signed to PTO has turned out to not be that great.
Well, with him, it's so hard with the numbers we have right now in the sample because he has shown he's a lot better than this, but playing in this system and playing with Jacob Larson may just not be good for your numbers. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe Jacob Larson's not an NHL defenseman and someone who was saying that 3 years ago turned out to be right.
Yeah.
I don't know who that was though, but moving on.
Battlebow93 said, do you think the lack of media scrutiny has allowed management to remain silent and not give the fan base a clear message on the direction of this team?
Well, oh God. I mean, I think the lack of media scrutiny is by design. Like, it's not because people aren't asking or wanting to ask questions. It's because the Ducks have policies in who they let in and who they let ask questions. And let's just say it's a very selective process. And if you don't meet certain criteria, you just got to hang tight and look, whatever. Like it's it's their right, I suppose. But I think that the lack of scrutiny, it's not because it's not out there. It's just because they're very selective with who they let ask questions. Because Lord knows, if either of us were in any of these Zoom conferences,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't just be about, oh, how has Isaac Lindstrom living with his girlfriend this year and being used to North America, really, how has that helped elevate his game? Because that's kind of the stuff that gets asked. And look, softball questions are okay, but there's got to be some scrutiny, some pepper here and there, right? And I do think Eric Stevens does a great job of that. I think he's on a bit of an island, unfortunately.
Yep. And Fire Carlisle gives both of us some credit for tweeting out as much info for Ducks fans as a lot of other people. So
I actually think that because we have been able to figure out ways to get information before beat writers, I think that we almost owe it to people who want to know this to put it out there because, I know what it's like to be a fan of the team and I want to know stuff, right?
yeah,
I mean, it's engaging in the product.
There's a reason why I seek out the information, and you and I have found ways to get the information. It's because I'm a fan of the team, and I find this stuff fascinating. And these little, the little roster moves of the taxi squad, that little minutia, I find absolutely fascinating. And all the little quirks of it, obviously with like Jamie Drysdale, I find that absolutely fascinating. And so I figure there are probably other people like me. I mean, it's the same exact reason why we started this podcast. There are people out there that probably don't want the force-fed narrative, like the magic of Rickard Rakell, and trying to look for something that's more substantive.
And I guess I want to make clear that I am not begrudging people for not asking these questions. I'm not begrudging, let's say, the team's commentators or radio commentators or beat writers to not be as critical because they don't have to be. You don't have to, like, there's no set playbook for how to cover a team. So they're not at fault for doing it this way. But that being said, I think it's more so on the team to maybe expand a little bit more who gets access. And I think over time, maybe, you will get some more unsavory articles or questions, but over time, you get a better product. And it also allows the people who are more critical to have some kind of a relationship, some kind of a dynamic with the people within the team and maybe understand their side a little better. And maybe that the criticism and the commentaries will be more fair and well-rounded. Like, this can work for everybody. This isn't crazy. This actually happens in most teams in professional sports. Who would have thought?
Yep. All right. So let's end with this question. And this is one definitely just for me. Lewis X209 threw up a softball for me. Speaking of softball questions, he wanted to know what my thoughts were on the AEW pay-per-view, which happened tonight. I wasn't able to watch the final two matches. I still need to watch them. They were actually on my screen during this, so I still need to. I'll go back once we're done and watch the street fight, which I heard good things about, and then the exploding barbed wire death match, which was good, I guess, but also had a very weird ending. But the pay-per-view overall was really, really good. If you enjoy wrestling at all, I highly suggest checking it out. It was a really fun show. It's one that I highly suggest looking at. I believe it was Hey Yo D-Flow. Hadn't really watched wrestling in a long time, but decided to tune in because of us. And tuned in and was chatting in our Discord chat about it. And it was a lot of fun. So thank you for you guys out there. It was a great show. I enjoyed it. Sorry, I'm also trying to get this message modded as we are talking.
Are you finished?
I'm finished. It was a good paper. Sorry, I was trying to talk about it while also trying to ban spammer in our Twitch chat. So really good pay-per-view, really fun show. I'd say my favorite match was potentially the ladder match. Really good. Felix is loving this right now. The ending to the Battle Royal was absolutely fantastic. Also, give me an hour of Jungle Boy versus Rey Fenix, and I will be happy.
I'm just happy that you're happy.
Thank you.
That's all that matters.
You want a fun little timestamp? So this was AEW Revolution. This is the exact show, but a year later, that you and I sat down and watched together and did a podcast about.
Oh, boy. Well, there you go, making me feel old again.
A year has passed since that. A year has passed since that.
That was That was right around the time the world turned.
Yeah, real quick. M. Young said, "Why are we the only team that haven't worn a reverse retro jersey?" I want to briefly mention this real quick, talking about the team. So they were supposed to actually wear them. I believe the original date was Feb 26th. They were supposed to wear them February 26th, and I think it was like April 6th or something along those lines. Let me see real quick. It was originally going to be Feb 26th and April 9th. Both games at home. The issue is the February 26th game was canceled or postponed. Sorry, not canceled. Because of Vegas or someone getting COVID and games having to get rescheduled. And so that game was actually scheduled to, I believe, April 16th. And so as a result, that became the new game for that. So the Ducks were actually going to have two games in April. April 23rd is where that game moved to. And the Ducks were going to have both of their games in April 9th and the 23rd. And unannounced by the team at all, I went and looked at the promotional schedule the other day. They went ahead and they moved the game from the first game for the Reverse Retro from March 9th to March 16th. And so instead of no announcement, no anything, I tried to trace back, and I forget who it was, but there's a follower who mentioned they were checking it every couple weeks and noticed the change. And so basically they switched it from being a home game on April 9th against the Avalanche to now they are debuting the jersey in Colorado. So the next time the Ducks are in Colorado, they are wearing the Reverse Retro jersey.
So how many people would have known this if you had not said this?
Well, not that many people, I guess, know the Reverse Retro schedule, seeing as the Ducks aren't making it that public, to the point where Eric Stevens actually had an article today, and he didn't really know when the games were at all. And I actually tweeted at him to let him know, oh, here's the promotional schedule. This is when the games are. He's like, thank you for that. He's like, they did not make this easy to find. I was like, yeah, I know. So the Ducks beat writer could not get that information from the team when he asked, even though it's on their website.
Believe me, we all know. We all know what the deal here. Anyway.
So, yes. So there it is for everyone. Long-winded way, March 16th. And actually, this is a fun way to get to our plugs. We actually are, so on our Patreon, we now have the watch-along tier. And Felix will get to the other tiers real quick. But we have added the watch-along tier for $15 a month. And at that tier, you'll get, in addition to all the stuff that Felix is going to go over, you will get 2 watch-alongs a month. And we have slated them for tomorrow's game, March 8th.
Yeah. That's tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Good.
Again, you're welcome. Against the LA Kings. And then also we will be doing a watch-along for the game, that March 16th game.
Well, look at that. It is tomorrow.
Where the Ducks will be wearing their Reverse Retro jersey.
So this is actually excellent because Jake tracked down the actual new date, unbeknownst to anyone else, even Eric Stevens, and planned for it on that night. So that's
what I'm here for.
That is a job well done by you, got to say. But yeah, tune in. Like, these things have become a lot of fun. We're getting our feet under us now a little bit more with these. Essentially, it's an alternative broadcast. A lot of people have gripes with the current broadcast team or just hockey broadcasting in general, and we're not here to bash on them in any way, but this is just an alternative. We give you stats. We give you matchups. We give you lineup decisions. We give you more nuanced technical breakdowns. And also, we just give you us, right? You get to hear our take on it as it's happening. If you value that at all, it's something worth watching.
It's basically a 3-hour podcast.
It is extremely long, and we actually try to not podcast while we're doing it. We try to talk about, we have to remind ourselves to talk about the game in front of us, which is okay. That we podcast a bit. We got to fill airtime, but they're marathons. They are marathons, but they're a lot of fun. And if you're a diehard Ducks fan, I do think that this will increase and enhance your experience. But Jake, you brought it up. The other 2 tiers, really straightforward, really simple. For $1 a month, you get access to our patrons only Discord chat. You get to join the movement that is sweeping the nation. You get to interact with other diehard fans. It's a very kosher environment, right? Everybody's there to just have a good time, talk about hockey. It gets a little crazy at times, especially when the Ducks are blowing leads. There's some frustration in there, but it's all It's all really well intended, and that's for $1 a month. If you're a hockey fan who maybe doesn't have too many other friends that are fans of the sport, or maybe you just want to join a new community, I think for $1 a month, you get that and you get to support our show. Well worth it. For $5 a month, though, you get access to the Discord chat, and you also get access to 2 bonus episodes where we go into in-depth topics, whether it's about the Ducks, whether it's league-wide. We'll do league-wide rankings, pick our NHL award winners. We'll do, I mean, the last one we did how we would rebuild the Ducks, and we went really in depth on that, more in depth than I thought we even would, to be honest. And so it's worth it there. And that's twice a month. You also get a little bit more of the banter, a little more unfiltered on that show. So that's at patreon.com/crash the pond. Now, a few other ways that you can support us. Jake talked about it earlier, but we are streaming these shows live at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sunday nights. So make sure to check that out at twitch.tv/crashthepond and subscribe there. If you like your podcast in video format, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/crashthepond. Make sure to subscribe there and turn on your notifications. Love to read the YouTube comments. People get wild in there, and I'm absolutely here for it. If you've been enjoying the show and you don't want to drop any money, nothing like that, that's totally fine. Just search Crash the Pond on Apple Podcasts, leave a rating and a review. We will read the reviews on the show. I don't think we don't have any new ones this week, but we will make sure to get to them live and on air if that is the case. We are also on Spotify, so if you're not an Apple user, no problem. We are on Spotify. Now, make sure to check out the website, crashthepond.com. We've got some merch, shirts, hoodies, different colors, orange, eggplant, and jade. That's at crashthepond.com/shop. At Crash the Pond on Twitter, Crash the Pond on Facebook. Make sure to check out Jake's article tomorrow. 5 takeaways. This is a big one. Jake went in. This was a very Jake article. I'll just put it that way.
What's that supposed to mean?
No, it was good.
Okay.
It means good.
Okay.
It means good.
But
it was good in your way. Good in your way. And so he'll probably be tweeting that out from his account on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. I'm on Twitter at Felix_Sicard. And unless Jake has anything else, he's looking away right now. Oh, because his cat Salem just jumped from the bed.
I was trying to get a hold of her to give her a little show to the camera, but she doesn't want anything.
She's running.
Right. Yeah.
She's running from you. She wants no part of your outdated Ducks t-shirt with the 20th anniversary patch.
Want to guess? Did you see who was on the back?
Is it Patrick Maroon?
It is a Patrick Maroon.
I actually just guessed. I had no clue.
Yep, 100% correct though. 62.
There you go. Very 13-14 Ducks-esque. Or is it 12-13? Whatever. But all right, folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for continuing to chug along in this season. And we will talk to you at the next show. Have a great week.
Bye.